Is Australia giving away minerals? Let's have a look. Good morning everyone, I'm Florian Heise and welcome to another episode of Heise Says. I thought we'd start the week with an article from news.com.au about taxes and royalty systems for our gas and oil industries. I've got my large stein of coffee and let's get into it everyone. So, tax and royalty systems for Australia's gas and oil industries need reform, experts argue. Now, when I read this, I was actually surprised at what we're about to discover regarding how the royalty system on gas and oil works here in Australia and other minerals as well, as I'm assuming. Now, here in Australia, since 1855, all minerals have essentially been owned by the Crown, which means by the state. If you have a title before then, you own all the minerals underneath there. But after that point, except for gold and silver, the royal minerals. But after that point, it's all owned by the state. So you would hope that the state would ensure that our civilization, if we're giving up these resources, it's only a one-time thing. Sure, oil and coal is renewable if you extend your time frame out to billions of years. But for practical purposes, it's a finite resource. That sure, we've got a lot of it. But once you sell it, that's it. That's it. So you would hope there would be plans and strategies in place to ensure that loss of an asset, selling of an asset, is going to be, well, guarded and protected with investments in the future of our civilization. That's what one would hope. So let's have a look at this article. So tax and royalty systems for Australia's gas and oil industries need reform, experts argue. Australians are being shortchanged when it comes to this issue, with the experts saying there's a huge gap between expectations and reality. So before we go into this any further, let me know how you think, particularly if you're not familiar with it, the royalty system worked. Frankly, I thought it would be Old Testament style. A portion, or probably even the New Testament, but a portion of everything that's dug up is provided to the civilization, where you have the privilege of doing it, regardless of your profits or loss of the business. That's what I assumed would be a percentage. But no, naive Florian. Australians are being shortchanged when it comes to royalties and tax for its oil and gas, with one expert saying we're giving away our natural resources. The Institute for Energy Economics and Financial Analysis has recommended the royalty and tax system covering oil and gas in Australia be overhauled, pointing out that Telstra paid 20 times as much corporate tax as all of the country's oil and gas companies. There you go. According to data from the Australian Taxation Office, Telstra paid $1.6 billion in taxes in 2016-17. Its revenue of $26.9 billion was similar to that produced by the oil and gas industry, but they paid just $81 million in tax. Australia is literally giving away its natural wealth, IEEFA gas analyst Bruce Robertson said. There is so much that can be done to fix the situation. All it requires is a small amount of political will. While the amount of federal corporate tax that oil and gas companies pay is relatively small, they are also expected to pay extra state royalties and the royalty-like federal petroleum resource rent tax. However, even here, Australians are missing out. In 2017, the West Australian reported that the Japanese oil company Impex would export $195 billion worth of liquefied natural gas, liquefied petroleum gas, and condensate from Darwin over 30 years. However, analysts commissioned by the company revealed no PRT, which is the petroleum resource rent tax, would be paid by its, ITSE LNG project, even after 30 years. Okay, so $195 billion worth of this natural asset is leaving the nation, never to return in human memory, and they're not going to pay anything from the petroleum resource rent tax, which is a royalty-like method. So, in a submission to the Senate inquiry. Well, I mean, there you go. Shouldn't just 10% of everything that comes up? Here's a suggestion: 10% of the petroleum gets stored, or all of the products, the LNG, LPG gets stored for Australia, stored for the civilization, rather than cash. Why not? And they can make their profits on everything else, and that's fine. That's an idea. Sure, there's holding costs and all the complexities of that, but in a submission to the Senate inquiry on Australia's oil and gas reserves, IEEFA argues there should be a thorough review of how royalties are calculated, and the PRRT should be replaced with a 12.5% royalty scheme. Catherine Tanner, the CEO of BG Group, promised around $1 billion a year in taxes and $300 million a year in royalties for its petroleum project in Queensland, Mr. Robinson said. The reality is, BG Group paid no tax in 2016-17, nor did its parent Shell Australia. Royalty rates have in fact been so low that the Queensland government increased the rate, although the amount received is still a fraction of what's expected. See, this is the thing, guys. Should it be on profits? That's a different thing. Should it just be the natural resource? Should you have to, give a tenth of your wheat like the old days? Why not? If the nation, if the state is the king and the companies are the new serfs, although, you could see it the other way around. And also just think how hard they go after normal people if, you're a little bit late on your bass, guys. Yeah, exactly. So, Associate Professor Roman Lannis from the University of Technology's Sydney's Accounting School told news.com.au the way the PRRT was structured was part of the problem. It allows offshore oil and gas companies to deduct their exploration costs as well as other expenses incurred before production. It also allows them to multiply these costs using uplift rates that take into account inflation and other factors. I mean, see, this is fine if we were to receive a physical amount of what they produced. I know it's very old-fashioned, but they can accumulate billions in offsets to reduce their PRRT, Professor Lannis said. Another factor has been the drop in the price of oil and gas, so the revenue they expected to earn from these projects has dropped. Professor Lannis said oil and gas companies may have estimated they would be paying PRRT within 10 to 20 years, but this has now been delayed, and it may even take longer if oil prices continue to come down further. This is the problem. So, there you go. What do you think, guys? What do you think? Professor Lannis, who produced a 2017 report for Get Up about the tax frauds of gas giants, believed the uplift rates and PRRT scheme in general should be changed. I wouldn't say it's a tax fraud. I would say they're legally working within the system that has been established. I think the system needs to change. I think there is definitely potential to revise it, especially if the government wants to raise more taxes, he said. The only way to increase the money collected is by revising legislation. So far, they have collected very little. Pretty much the only PRRT being collected is off very old projects. His report estimated that Australia would collect an extra $52 billion in tax revenue between 2012 and 2015 if it had adopted the same royalty system as in Canberra's Alberta region. Most countries in the world get significant taxation and royalties from their non-renewable oil and gas wealth. Given its large size, Australia does not, Mr. Robinson said. Most countries view taxation and royalties as a national sovereign right to impose on any industry. Australia does not. And many countries divert a portion of their oil and gas royalties to a sovereign wealth fund to supply future national interests. Australia, again, inexplicably does not do this. Well, here's a question. Just imagine that $52 billion. What if it was given to tax deductions to Australian citizens? How about that? Sure, the sovereign wealth fund, we could do all of that. But what if it was just easing the burden on the normal people? How about that as a revolutionary idea, guys? The Australian Institute also criticised the PRRT system, saying it was distorting investment and failing to deliver benefits. In 2017, it found the revenue from the use of Australia's resources had declined despite huge increases in gas production. It recommended changes including that the current 40% PRRT be increased to 70% on certain projects. It said exploring oil and gas reserves did not always benefit the public. The Australian Institute also criticised the PRRT system, saying it was distorted. Oh, we've already read that. Okay. Ultimately, the public benefits of oil and gas projects are often exaggerated and costs minimized, the Institute said in its public submission. So they made a mention here of wealth funds, and let's have a look at a very well-known one, and this is from Wikipedia, just from Google. This is the Government Pension Fund of Norway. It comprises two entirely separate sovereign wealth funds owned by the government of Norway. The Government Pension Fund Global, also known as the Oil Fund, was established in 1990 to invest the surplus revenue in the Norwegian petroleum sector. It is over $1 trillion US in assets, including 1.4% of global stocks and shares, making it the world's largest sovereign wealth fund. In May 2018, it was worth about $1,900 per Norwegian citizen. It also holds portfolios of real estate and fixed income investments. Many companies are excluded by the fund on ethical grounds. Okay, so here we go. $195,000 per Norwegian citizen from 1990. What does Australia have? We've got the Futures Fund. So, an independent managed sovereign wealth fund established in 2006 to strengthen the Australian government's long-term financial position. At 30th September 2019, it was valued at $166 billion. So, in 13 years, as opposed to a much longer period, you're going to have less growth. But the growth in the last few years has been pretty bad. Pretty bad. So, I'll look into this in greater extent. But one thing we need to just look at, let's just compare. Look at the scale of Norway's petroleum industry. So the economic complexity of Norway is 22nd in the world. Australia's 59th. Our exports, or their exports, are pretty much less than half of ours. They're 100 billion, we're 243 billion. Our imports are 199. There's 84. Their GDP per capita is 12th in the world of 61,000 US. Ours at the time of this is 48,000. Now let's just have a look at their crude petroleum industry is worth 28.1 billion in exports. Petroleum gas, 27.7 billion in exports. The two exports are crude petroleum gas, and then non-filleted fresh fish as their third biggest export. What are Australia's? Iron ore, 48.2 billion. Coal, 47 billion. Gold, 29.1 billion. Petroleum gas, 20.3 billion. So their petroleum gas industry is 27 billion. It's only about a third larger than Australia's. They have a future a fund that is worth $1 trillion and is the biggest one in the world, with 195,000 per Norwegian citizen. Australians are allowing businesses to write off their exploration costs against the royalties they have to pay, and it may be decades before our civilization reaps any benefit from these natural resources. You have to understand, with automation, the potential employment benefits of this are also going to be less. And how many of these companies are owned by foreign entities? So the money is sent offshore anyway. Let me know what you think about all of this, guys. What would your solution be? What do you reckon about a portion of everything dug up just goes to the state? Literally, we could have gold paved roads. I'm being facetious, but I'd like to hear your opinions. Take care, guys. Thank you for watching. If you like my content and would like me to produce more, or help me to produce more, I have a Patreon where you can make a small donation. I also have an Amazon and eBay affiliate link, where if you use those platforms, I receive a small kickback and it doesn't cost you a cent. It's a really easy way for you to support creators you like, and you don't have to spend a cent. Finally, I also have merchandise we sell on the Heise website, and a PayPal or Ethereum if you want to make a donation. Take care, guys. Have a great day, and I'll talk to you later. Bye for now.